Hello, everybody, and welcome to Athletic Definition. My name is Coach Ray Z, and today my guest is David. And David, I don't want to mispronounce your last name. How do you pronounce your
Mhm.
last
It's Droogleever, but if you want to be really fancy and Dutchify it, it would be Drooglever. My Dutch cousins would kill me for that, but it's Drooglever. That will suffice.
name? And I want to say thank you. I know this is your first time on Fireside, and thank you for joining me. Uh, David, I brought him on because I actually just recently met him, but I heard him speak, and I'm like, oh, this guy speaks very eloquent and very knowledgeable. And then I found out you were a black belt in jiu-jitsu, so that piqued my interest even more. And then reading your bio, I was like, wow, this guy captain, if I read it right.
Yeah, captain, or in the Navy, it's you're a lieutenant, which is like the third rank of officer in the military.
And I mean, I have so many questions, but I'm gonna start off like in the beginning. As a kid, were you active, or did you play? Did your parents like push sports on you at all?
My goodness. I think you're the first person to ask me that. So I actually grew up playing mostly music. So piano and then drums, percussion, marching bands, and all that. So the only thing athletic that I did substantively was just cardio run, a little bit of track. I always liked the intramural stuff like volleyball and stuff, but I was always like the asshole because I was taking the ball away from the other people that were too slow. So I always did things just sort of low calorie. I led the racquetball team at my fraternity and at Georgia Tech, but nothing like really, really deep until I found jujitsu. So I did try taekwondo when I was about 12 or 13 and advanced quickly. I knew I was really good in martial arts. And I have a lot of flexibility and dexterity and motor coordination. And but once my parents figured out that I liked it, they used that as a punishment tool, so they'd take it away from me when I would act up. So that's about the extent of my athleticism. I think the biggest thing I liked when I was growing up was just climbing trees. I was like I'm sort of channeling my inner monkey spirit when I was little. I still like to climb trees. I'm almost 40, so I try not to fall out. But when I was little, that was my favorite sport, I think.
Actually, as a kid, since you mentioned it, I used to love climbing trees. I have not done it in years. Maybe I should try it. Take me back to my childhood.
Yeah. Just be safe, obviously. I mean, these days, so I live in Texas and there's lots of trees everywhere. You got into the country and then it's so tempting. You want to climb up and up, but then sometimes it's like hard to get down. It's kind of like with rock climbing. So I did that a couple weeks ago, just willy nilly. And the hard sometimes it's hard to get down because you did some funky move to get up there. you, it's not the same going back down. Sometimes it can be harder. So but it's good times. It's a creative sport.
And so then you also mentioned college. In college, you're just more a student than anything else. Because I know to become a black belt in jiu-jitsu, for those listening in, David is a black belt. That usually takes, I would say, 13 to 15 years,
Yeah.
maybe.
hmm
So did you start dabbling into that already in college, or?
Yeah. So the only thing I had martial arts wise was the taekwondo experience in middle school, and that was it. What got me really piqued my interest in jujitsu is when I watched the early UFCs. So when I was in the Navy and I was off of shift work, there was nothing else to do, so I bought like a whole stack of UFC DVDs, and I just had this knowingness that I can do. I'm well suited for that. Like I'm designed for this kind of sport, and I just threw myself into it, and it was a big leap of faith because again, I've never done any contact sport or real combat sport. I never done any kind of wrestling or grappling. I grew up feeling kind of squeamish to make to do any kind of contact sports, if that makes sense. I felt that was kind of weird. Like my dad would say, "Hey, let's go play tennis or something, civilized." So it was very uncomfortable his first 2-3 weeks of jujitsu. I was like, "This is weird." You're sweating all over each other and trying to break each other's bones. But I just powered through it, and I'll never turn back.
And I know you got your black belt in Texas, but you mentioned being in the Navy, watching the UFC. So
hmm
did you start training back in the Navy?
Yeah, that's actually when it happened. So it was early November of 2008. So I remember exactly. The Sunday before I went in, I was, went pretty hard Saturday night, and my friend drove me home Sunday morning. I remember in this days looking at Dexter MMA Vale Tudo. It's like old school. Vale Tudo is the no rules fights, like bare knuckles fights down in Brazil, and so I decided I was like, you know what, I'm instead of just partying all the time, I'm gonna go do this. And when I signed up the next day, small team out in Southeast Connecticut, and where it all started. And it was really interesting because it was every other day you did grappling, and then the other day you did striking. So then Friday would do, the full cage fighting. And that's where it all started. And then 6 months after, I did my first NAGA, which is North American Grappling Association, and I won that tournament. That was like, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I was thinking about it because that's when my whole life changed. That's when my sense of empowerment went through the roof. I said, well, "Oh my gosh, I'm a very dangerous person now," and I would come to have a more fuller realization of that. But that's what I needed at that time. I was 28, 29, and I was having a really hard time in the Navy. So that's what saved me. I always say that jujitsu saved my life because that was probably one of the lowest times of my adult life. And so I started in my last year in the Navy, and that really pulled me out of the trenches. And a year later, I got out of the Navy, and then I continued to do jujitsu and live my life.
Wow, I mean, for those who don't practice jujitsu, that's the classic line: "Jujitsu saved my life." And
Yeah.
uh, I'm glad that you found it. And to me, that I was going to ask you about that because it must have been really hard being in the Navy and training at the same time, having to fulfill both commitments. You're doing that. Of course, you're not being a paid athlete. You're doing it on your own free time, and
Yeah.
you could just be relaxing at home or wherever you lived at the time. The submarine.
Yeah, well, I was on submarines until about 2009, so that obviously restricted my mobility and ability to stay in shape. And that's a whole other topic. Just how do you stay in shape on a submarine? It's almost impossible. It's very difficult. Let's put it that way. So I remember doing like a Versa climber, which is, it's kind of like this tall structure, and it's like sort of climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't take too much space, so you can put it in little cracks and crevices in the engine room, and that's about it, and some other small things. But that's what I did to stay in shape. And then once I found jujitsu, that subsumed everything. I wasn't running anymore, I wasn't lifting, I only did jujitsu and MMA. So it's like the perfect workout. People are like, do you lift and stuff? I'm like, nah, I don't lift, man. I just do jujitsu.
And so, how long would you be like underground, I get, or underwater for at a time?
Yeah, your submarine's underground. It's a bad day.
Well,
A ground or underground
today I'm
are
wearing
both bad days.
for those listening in, the Merry Fitness outfit of the day is aliens. So maybe there could be submarines underground.
Yeah, aliens running submarines underground. That's it. Well, submarine means sub, meaning under, marine, meaning water. So it'd be like more subterranean devices that the aliens are running, like drilling through the ground, like Dig Dug or something like that. I'm dating myself now. So 6 months at a time. So when you're on deployment on fast attack submarines, those are the more agile submarines. The boomer ones, which have the nuclear missiles on it, they're out 3 months and they come back for 3 months, generally speaking. So it was like 6 months mostly underwater. You would come up every now and then to supply, or maybe you want to take a swim or something if you're lucky. So, but the probably 97, 98% of the time is underwater.
When you first started it in the submarine, sleeping in a nuclear submarine, did that let you sleep at all, or did that
Whew.
thought cross your mind, like where you couldn't sleep for a while, or it took you a while to just get used to it?
I am still recovering from my jacked up circadian rhythms from being on the submarine. So a lot of people don't know that when you are on watch or doing the various shift rotations on the submarine, it's three shifts a day, 6 hours each. So you have 18-hour days. So you're not on a 24-hour clock. Like where the sun is or the moon is doesn't matter on a submarine. Your mission is 24/7. So you're on watch for 6 hours, then you're off watch for 6 hours doing other tasks, and then ideally you're supposed to sleep for 6 hours. So to answer your question, is you get a 6 hour block every 18 hours or once every shifts, 3 shift cycles. But you can be woken up at any time because, hey, your job is to fix the electrical systems, and there's something wrong. So they're gonna it's called racking you out. So they're gonna pull you out of your basically pull you out of your rack, which is called your bed. It's called your rack. And then you go fix something, and then you try to go back to sleep. But then you have to go on to watch right after that. So again, because it's an 18-hour cycle, the time when you go to sleep and wake up is always at a different time of the day. It's not, when the sun comes up, you wake up, and when the sun goes down, you go to sleep. It's not like that at all.
And then, until you mentioned it, I didn't even really think about working out on a submarine. So did they provide like a little gym facility?
Yeah, there was the Versa climber. I think there was a stair climber. Each one's a little bit different depending on what the command wants to do. There could be other contraptments. What's it called? And other devices where maybe like the stretch bands, or there weren't any like weights generally speaking, just because it's too cumbersome to keep around. On the larger submarines, you have like treadmills. That's very much a luxury because again, it takes a lot of space. So other than that, you have to get really creative. Maybe do some push-ups. You can, of course, stretch, little things like that. But the submarine forces is renowned for having the least in shape military people, and they eat a lot. So the idea is that hey, you can entice people to go on a submarine because they have the best chefs on a submarine. So they get the best food. Of course, it's mostly frozen, and but they get the best cooks. So I mean, I remember having steak and lobster quite often on the submarine, but of course you gain a lot of weight, you don't really move, but hey, at least you're sort of fat and somewhat happy.
Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, when I read that, I was just more impressed of the whole, your whole bio is impressive. And then the black belt. And then, so you've been doing it for 14 years now?
Yeah, 12 years now, 12 or almost 13 now.
Okay. So then when did you just recently received your black belt?
Yeah, last March from Professor Alan Mohler in Dallas, Texas. I'm here in Austin now, and I'm trying to reestablish my jujitsu family. But yeah, just 9 months ago, almost to the
So
day.
I do have a couple of friends that train in Texas, but I'm just not really familiar with what part is Moeller School.
Yeah, so see, he's out of Dallas, so he's got a couple locations up there, and that's his stomping ground. So there are no Moeller MMA jiu-jitsu places here in Austin. I don't want to, I have to rattle off all the different names. I mean, you have the big ones like 10th Planet are around, and other smaller shops and the Gracie Bajas and stuff. So, but Moeller doesn't come down here, and I also asked him like, where do you think I could possibly train? And it's basically at this point, I'm just on my own at this point, which is all good.
So are you looking to teach? Is that anything that?
Well, yeah, this is interesting. I'll take this like bit by bit. So the short answer is yes. And the thing about getting a black belt, I could talk about this for a very long time, is that first of all, you put it on, people treat you differently immediately. It's really, really interesting. And when someone called me professor for the first time, actually, it was my boss was one of the first ones because he is a blue belt at my old company. And I was like, "Oh my god, that's so strange to get called professor." And that's a little bit more traditional here in Austin, or in like kind of no-gi schools. That's not really used as much, but definitely with Brazilian schools, you'll see that a lot. I don't really care too much for all the etiquette and the rules and what have you, but you do kind of pay homage to some of the traditions and what have you. So to answer your question about teaching, so I do want to teach, but in a different way. The jujitsu that I think, and this is like way sort of outside like normal domain of thinking of jujitsu, is more of a spiritual jujitsu. So I like to blend spirituality and jujitsu into sort of one bucket. So when I teach, it's like, yeah, could I make world champions? Yeah, sure, of course. You don't have to be like a world champion to teach one, but to me, jujitsu is much more about what happens off the mat, or at least as much what happens off the mat as on the mat, because everything you learn on the mat is something that could potentially help you to flourish as a human being off the mat. So when I'm teaching jujitsu, I like to loop in like, hey, here's how this can apply to your life, or here's how this can help you to process things, or maybe to unblock stuck energy. These kind of things are very important because jujitsu, it'll be very limited if you only just go and you train for an hour or two every couple of days, and then you go back to life and everything's the same. Jiu-jitsu, when done right and applied right, should change you as a person. It ought to change you as a person. So that's why I love it so much. So yeah, jujitsu in the very beginning saved me from in a very practical sense, by giving me a sense of empowerment. In the middle of my jujitsu journey, it was more about building up confidence, and then just proving to myself what I had to experience, which really was sort of finding what what like a true sort of higher version of masculinity was, because I was a very shy child. I was a very introverted child, and I wanted to be able to stick out my chest. At the very end, it became about how do I give back, and also the spirituality element. So jujitsu, when it comes to teaching, is about giving back to other people. So what I'm looking for is, good students, not to like take from any place, but just people to work with that are interested again in getting better at jiu-jitsu, but also applying it in their life and up leveling their life on and off the mats.
I love that, and I think that we're in a new age. When you find yourself talking to people about jujitsu and spirituality, do you find people are open to it, or they're like, "Oh, you're trying to do woo woo jujitsu"?
Woo woo jujitsu. I like that because it rhymes. Jujitsu, jujitsu, jujitsu. So it's not for everyone. So I'm trying to niche down. I mean, ultimately, I have a system that I'm continuing to develop out. I haven't really actually gone to a public forum and said this, so this is kind of like hot off the press. But I see it kind of like a triangle. So I have a background. I've done a lot of corporate commercial stuff. So I consider myself a business to business tech sales expert. So I've done a lot of that for the last 10 years. So that's kind of maybe like the practical element of the triangle. And then the other element is, of course, just jujitsu. It's about skillfulness in life and applying your energy in an optimal and efficient kind of way. That again, that applies everywhere, especially business, relationships, your health, right? And then the third one is really about spirituality. And you don't have to have all three, but if you do get all three, then it becomes really, really powerful system. And again, that's a very niche thing. Most people want to focus on like a smaller thing, but I'm a more holistic practitioner, I would say. So the people I'm looking to work with are probably billionaires. I mean, those are the people that can understand. They're looking for more of like the fringe type of stuff. They want to optimize their business, their health, and um, and perhaps their martial arts if they're into jujitsu. For as an example, that would be like my ideal client. But I'm not publicly saying that yet because again, it's like only maybe one in a million people would be a good fit for something like that, that kind of support structure. So that's how I kind of think about jiu-jitsu. I forgot your original question because you're getting me all fired up here.
No, that's great. Just what you're letting us know. I'm uh, I'm loving it all, and you mentioned that you competed for your first time, and that gave you your
Ooh.
confidence, and you're like, I'm dangerous, and kind of change your whole mindset. Did you get the jujitsu competition bug after that, and just start competing and competing?
Whew, man, I'm getting goosebumps now that you're asking because this is such a. I can talk to you about it because you understand that rush of, and it's like so many emotions: anxiety, excitement, a little bit of fear, trepidation, right? Like just trying to find that courage, right, to get out there. Now, keep in mind that I'd never competed before, so it's not like I competed in like football and soccer and wrestling in middle school and high school. Some people grew up in families where that was condoned and that was like a thing. Like that's normal to do some kind of sports competition, be highly highly competitive physically. That wasn't the case for me. That was actually looked down upon, not explicitly, but my parents were immigrants. They didn't grow up in like American culture, so I had to acclimate. So I never understood why people liked competitive sports like football. I watch football all day, let alone baseball, let alone I don't know golf or fishing or something like that. Like that was strange to me. Like what do you get out of this? And my initial foray into like the YMCA playing basketball, I didn't like it. I stank at it. I was always in right field in baseball, which is like the least skilled player. I hated that. So I just like ran the other way. Um, so what was your original question again? All these memories are like flooding into me.
Oh, if you got the jujitsu competition bug and just
Thank you. Yeah. So to do the competition, so this is really interesting because when I talk to people about fitness and sort of like the mindset in regards to fitness, I always recommend find something that has other people, has a social element to it. So if you want to do something consistently, which is really the only, to me, the largest measure of success. I don't. Who cares if you do jujitsu for 3 months every single day, 90 days in a row, and then you flare out, and then you come back 3 years later. Success in jujitsu or anything that you want to get skilled at, whether it's chess or volleyball or hell, world travel, even. It's something that you apply every single day. So it doesn't. It's much better to train, say, like twice a week in jujitsu for 20 years as opposed to, you know, 100% of the time for 3 months, take off 6 months and come back to it. That's not success. The first consistency is what you commit to. That is success any sport, especially jujitsu, because people it sucks when you come onto the mats and people are like, oh, you're a purple belt now, and like I'm still a blue belt. We start at the same time. Dude, that's the worst feeling. So I'm not really dogmatic about rank structures or the belt structure, but there are some psychological upsides and benefits that we can talk about later. But in terms of the sports bug or the competition bug, I was always scared to compete, always. And just because again of my background, when I remember going to that first Naga, in my mind, I didn't have like that championship mindset. I was like, if I just don't get tapped out in the first round, like that's a win, dude. I showed up, man, dropped weight for the first time. Actually dropped a tremendous amount of weight. It's about, for me, since I'm about 7-8% body fat, I had to drop like 7 pounds. Like that was huge to get into the 150 to 159.9 bracket. And so I dropped weight for the first time and then competed for the first time. And then I had one submission, so it was an ankle lock submission. And this is after 5-6 months of training. And then I beat the first guy, and then I just steamrolled the next three guys. I didn't even know the rules. I didn't know what. I just knew how to put the guy on the back and then try a couple of submissions that I knew. And I just like adrenaline dumped on all these guys, and I just kept, they kept raising my hand, one and again and again. And on the finals, I didn't even know I was in the finals. I looked at my coach. I'm like, what's next? Like, we went to overtime in the finals, and I was like, what are you gonna do? He's like, dude, this is the finals. This is it. You just have to just stay ahead right here, right? So I ended up taking him down in overtime. And I'm pretty sure that guy was a blue belt, by the way. I was like, there's no way. He's like way after. He's like sandbagging, he's like 12, 18 months easy. I was at like 5 or 6 months. So it was the novice bracket Naga. And then so I ended up taking the guy down. He's like, you're winning, and just keep it down. And dude, we were like going all the way across. It was at the Twin Rivers Casino in Rhode Island. And I remember at the end, I was looking around. I was like, it's like, what happened? Why is everyone like stuff? He's like, you won. I was like, oh my God, I won. And then Gabriel Gonzaga comes out. He like shakes my hand. I get a samurai sword. And like everyone's taking pictures. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. I got the big old banner. So it was one of the happiest days of my life, man. I couldn't believe I completely transcended the ceiling that I thought my life was limited to by breaking past that seal, and everything was really possible after that.
Now, for people listening in on the simulcast or on the stream, and anyone in the audience who doesn't practice jujitsu, what you described was a very cool and exciting moment. Maybe they don't know who Gabriel is, Gonzaga, or a Samaras, or
Mm.
was this? This is your first tournament that you got this
It
on?
was my first one. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
Hmm.
don't even, maybe you get like a trophy or a medal,
You
but
get a samurai sword. Yeah,
that's very cool.
yeah.
I've seen a couple where you get a championship belt. Kind of want that as
Yeah,
well. The
yeah,
Naga.
yeah. Yeah, it's Naga. Yeah. So after that, I did IBJJF, and my goal to myself, because I'm in corporate. I mean, I jujitsu is a passionate hobby of mine. I don't do it full time, and so I would just commit to twice a year minimum competition. Almost all of them IBJJF after that, which most people would consider as one of the most prestigious
Yeah.
jujitsu competitions out there. People would, of course, kind of debate that,
Mhm.
especially nowadays. But definitely 10+ years ago, that was like the creme de la creme. You could do some local ones, but the ones that I competed at, I did Masters Worlds twice, but most of them were international opens in Texas. So I did get the bug to a certain degree. I always wanted to test myself. I never wanted to get the next belt until I gold medaled at least once in my division. So I was lightweight. I would compete in my age division and for my belt. So I didn't want a black belt until I at least got a couple of golds at brown belt, for example. So I always made that a big point because I didn't want like a participation belt. I want to feel like I actually earned it by winning competition.
Yeah, I love to hear everyone's different journey. I can't. He's a pretty well known jujitsu black belt. I can't remember his name though, but I remember his story. He was talking about how he never won not one tournament. I think he said he never won a tournament until he was a black belt, and then he just went on this winning streak. And so there's
Ooh.
also benefits to like not winning and persevering. But I understand the your personal not wanting to. Hey, here's just because you came here for 6 months or a year. Here's your belt, and that's actually still, I guess, varies from school to school. And I understand there's people that maybe go for years and like they're not very physically, I don't know, athletic or
Hmm.
gifted, but they've just been there for so long and
Hmm.
it'd be wrong not to give them a belt. But
Yeah,
then
agreed.
yeah, at that level, but yeah, jiu-jitsu is so great in so many different ways, and it could get controversial if you kind of like
Almost always. Given
yeah,
enough time, there's some controversy.
and then and you were talking about not competing as a kid, because as a kid I didn't really play sports, and that does play a big part
It
when you
does. It really
never
does.
had people cheering for you or booing for you or any of, and then all of a sudden your first competition, the guy's really trying to just choke you, and in a good way, all friendly.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like it. That first one, I remember the first touch point with the competitor, and so this is, that bracket. So it was in the 20s, which is, I think, the adult division, which is 29 and below, is the most intense. And I'm like at the top end of it. I think I was 29 at the time, and I remember that first touch point with my first competitor. I was like, this man is trying to kill me. Oh my god, way stronger than I ever thought. So I just again, let that panic and adrenaline just dump. I just try to just steamroll them back. Cause like, there's no way I'm gonna die here. Again, it feels like that your life is in some kind of great peril initially. Over time, it becomes a sport, right? But that first time you compete, oh, it's so intense, man. There's nothing like it, but it's so worth it.
So much that you mentioned brought me back to the first time I competed. I went in with that mentality: as long as I don't lose, uh,
Yeah.
and I got a
Yeah.
draw going in with that mentality. I got a
Mm.
draw, but you don't continue because it was submission only. Um, but I needed the confidence and just kept competing, and I love it. It's great. And I don't really get to do it now. Texas is
Mhm.
different. I guess with the whole pandemic and COVID. Right now, with my
Yeah.
situation, I don't. I got to do it this past weekend, and I walked an hour there to work out, and then I did my jujitsu, and then I walked an hour back home.
Oh, geez. Wow. Do you not
Last
own a
week I
car?
was missing it. I was like, oh, I don't care. I'm gonna walk there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, here's what I would say for if that's not my primary goal now, I have a lot of other things going on in my life. I've far exceeded all of my jujitsu goals beyond my wildest imagination. So now my jujitsu journey is really about having fun and being playful. So like when I roll, so first of all, like I'm at a gym where it's just no-gi right now, so I kind of want to come in low and like I'm just a guy. I still want to be a white belt all over again, and I could say a lot about that part of the journey. To me, getting a black belt is really just continual learning, like realizing that you just started learning and that you really just it's not about the belt and that you just want to go back to being a white belt again and just continue to learn and learn and learn. That's why I resisted for a long time a black belt. I mean, that was foisted upon me. I was like, but I didn't want to be like an asshole. I'm like, nah, 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 nah. Because when you have a very senior person come up to you and say, we need to pick a day, like when we're going to celebrate your black belt and put it on. I was like, okay, I couldn't say no because Professor Muller's the nicest man you've ever met. He's an incredible person. So, I did accept it, right? I didn't ask for it, I didn't request it. And that's a differentiator in martial arts because not to completely just poo poo on other martial arts, but the thing that's unique about jujitsu is that I mean, it's maybe like one in every couple thousand people, maybe 1 to 1,000, maybe one in every 5,000 people to get your black belt. So it's very rare. I know when I first started, my gym was all white belts. I was the senior guy because I came from another gym. I had 2 stripes on my white belt. So at that gym in Houston, I was pretty much the most senior guy for about 6 years. So there was one black belt who owned and operated the gym, and when I saw a blue belt, I'm like, oh my God, it's a god. Like they know everything. I'd ask all these questions because it's so rare. So there's only 5 belts, like white, blue, purple, brown, and black. And each one takes anywhere from 1 to say 3 years to progress through. And you get some gyms do stripes to show some progression within the belt. But the black belts are so rare. And especially 10, 15 years ago, so, I always let people know, I'm like, "Hey, like, there's nothing special about me, but just understand that if you're around like a brown or black belt, like pick their brain, especially if they're making themselves available to you. Like you're around someone who's got a PhD in this sport in martial arts, pick their brain. My God, So, yeah, take advantage of the opportunity with people that are skilled because it does take 10 plus years and you can't fake being a black. It's very difficult to fake being a black belt in jiu-jitsu because you get outed out really fast because the thing that's unique about jiu-jitsu is that you can train it 100%, 100% of the time and not get injured, unlike say like boxing, for example, because you'll get like TBI. But in jujitsu, it's like you every single day that you're on the mat and you're doing sparring, you are pretty much showing where you're at, what your level of knowledge and skill is in jujitsu. That's very difficult to fake.
Yeah, I think I watch like fake black belts on Instagram.
Yeah,
I
sure.
love people get exposed all the time, and I think actually today, Jiu-Jitsu's Time article was our most martial artist fakes.
Yeah.
That was the title, and I could see that, and I think that there probably was a lot more pre-internet, you know, and that was like
Mhm.
one of the main reasons why they didn't want you to go train in any other school. It was, you know, they would say it's like disrespectful to you.
Yeah.
They would say,
Yeah, Creole chick, right? It's like the
really,
traitor.
they don't want you to find out that they're phonies and the other people are maybe really teaching real techniques versus what you're teaching.
Yeah.
And yeah, they need to be exposed. And I personally do like what you're doing about the spiritual because it's taking it back to kind of the original philosophy of martial arts and even some of the jujitsu, the philosophy of it. I can't believe who the Japanese guy that saw snow falling from a tree and that's where he came up with the concept of jujitsu. It's very
Mhm.
like kind of like poetic and
Mhm.
philosophical, you know, full of nature. And you also mentioned being an immigrant. You know, your
My
parents.
parents were I'm first generation American. Mhm.
So, how do you typically? Did you celebrate Christmas coming over here or, at all, or is
Oh,
that?
interesting question. Yeah, and I know, I mean, so folks that are tuning in, what's up, Lee, Gabriel, Mark? So Ray asked me to kind of Christmas it up. So I got a green screen. That's always there behind me, of course. But I got a green shirt and a red shirt. I don't have the hat, but so I try my best, right? So I I don't believe in like forced holidays. I don't consider myself like a Christian that that would celebrate Christmas. I think it's a bit silly actually. But nonetheless, I don't want to be like a Scrooge or a Grinch or something. So to answer your question, growing up, it was something that we celebrated. Maybe like every other Christmas, we'd get a tree. Sometimes we just wouldn't get a tree, and we just wake up and have breakfast and to just chill out. So it's not as big a thing. I mean, celebrating Christmas very much is an American thing, especially since we're such hyper consumerists here. And Christmas, unfortunately, has become about buying stuff for each other, which is ridiculous. I think it totally bastardizes the meaning of Christmas. If you're one to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, it's totally bastardized. It's insane. So I will celebrate in my own way. I'll spend time with loved ones, but I don't make it a point to buy things. I might write a letter or just spend quality time with people. That's how I like to celebrate Christmas and the holidays.
Wow, writing a letter. You don't hear that very often.
Oh my goodness, man. I don't even get me started. Like I have this whole bit on communication. I The way we communicate now is awful. I mean, people are really bad at conversation. People are terrible at digital communications. Digital body language is a great book out there. It talks about how much we basically suck at communicating, getting our what we intend to say rarely gets received properly by the other side. So if you sit down and write a letter, you're much more intentional about what you're trying to say. And it makes what you're trying to say much more clearly communicated if you put the intention into it. So I do like that. If nothing else, like that sort of that touch of, oh, you can see the pen on the paper, that's like your signature. I mean, it's like it's genuinely from you instead of like a font on a screen. So I mean, I embrace all kinds of. I think they can all be done skillfully and unskillfully. So, but yeah, I mean, do something like out of the norm, like like use some creativity, right? And like even today, it's like I don't have anything Christmassy. I'll just there's this red shirt I haven't worn in a year. You know what I mean? So, like, why not? Like, express creativity. To me, like Christmas is really about just letting um your sort of higher self express yourself most authentically and genuinely.
Yeah, I mean, me being a Mexican American growing up, we celebrated Christmas, but you know, growing older and as people pass away and you know you start realizing it's not about the gifts or anything like that, you're like, oh, Christmas is really what I always enjoyed about it was spending more time with family and friends, and that's really I think what brings the holiday joy. And I know a lot of people, for people it's rough, so I kind of turned the idea of trying to be not the Grinch and spread the holiday cheer into a daily show. So I've been doing this this is my second year of every day on Christmas time. I do a show every day for the 31 days and just wear ridiculous outfits every day. I wear a ridiculous outfit, and hopefully I could just bring some cheer. A lot of people are down, and then I get to meet fascinating people like black belts in jiu-jitsu, and get to pick their brain. You mentioned that earlier in jiu-jitsu, and that's one of the things I love about the sport compared to, I play basketball. I've done some boxing. Nothing on a pro level, but you don't get to go and just pick the brain of LeBron James and Kobe Bryant at a pickup game. You don't. And in jiu-jitsu, you have the opportunity to meet such high-level black belts all
Mhm.
the time and actually roll with them, or them teach you.
Mhm.
And usually, I mean, yeah, I guess they do have basketball camps, but it's not as
Mhm.
easy attainable like jiu-jitsu. It's a whole
Yeah.
different level.
Part of that is jiu-jitsu is still relatively new as a sport and martial art, and so you don't have a high concentration of black belts, say, and so the community is pretty small. So, at the place where I'm training, so I don't know if you know Eddie Bravo, but the instructor there, I just checked on Instagram. He was right in front of Eddie Bravo rolling last weekend somewhere in, I think, Los Angeles or something like that. And it's just like, so I'm just like 2 steps away from Eddie Bravo, who's one of the top, elite creative jiu-jitsu guys out there, I would say, and runs the 10th planet system. So super, super small world. It's very, very small. Agreed.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't know 10th Planet was as big it is. It, like, I guess nationwide, is it popping out everywhere? In California, they're all
Yeah,
over.
it is. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't wanna sit here and plug, any particular gym because, again, there's always, like, jujitsu drama that goes down, but yeah, in fact, you are right. That is, has proliferated across the US, maybe even across the world, but I just stay focused on the people in front of me.
Yeah, to me, what's interesting about them is how they're just kind of franchising it, and they're like everything that's being done right now in jiu-jitsu. Even the first UFC is helping the sport grow, and it's interesting to see how it's going to another level by franchising it to that point where it's
Mhm.
going everywhere. Just like Gracie, you know,
Mhm.
that name is pretty well known, I would say, even amongst average Americans. You could probably maybe go ask 10 people, and you'll probably get two that be like, "Oh yeah, I know who that is." And
Mhm.
that's hard to do.
Yep.
You could go ask them who the point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers is, and maybe they won't even tell you. Mm. So I love jujitsu, and I want to thank you so much for coming on here as well. And uh, if people want to reach you, what type of services are you doing? I know you do a podcast as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you put the Instagram link
Yeah.
on there,
Drop anyone
and
the
so you
same
can send
thing.
me a message on Instagram. Services that I provide, I'm not like sort of hard marketing anything really. My biggest thing, and we didn't even touch on this, is I'm on, I would say, like, the war path to help the world build trust. And that's the only thing I really care about, like working and speaking and communicating with people that care about building trust with each other collectively across the planet. So my only call to action really is to check out my trust manifesto. So it's just clear text at trustmanifesto.energy. Again, trustmanifesto.energy. It's just text, right? So, and what I would like is to hear feedback from people, not on whether it's something that they buy into, but I'm curious, like, how to build trust. How do we build trust with each other? It's like I'm a very high trust person. I just met you a couple days ago, right, Ray, on Clubhouse, and so now we're having this really great conversation. So you can't do that without building trust with people. And also, I'm trusting you because we never done this before. So, but when you lean forward and you trust, everything becomes possible in human relationships, and your life begins to more and more flourish. You start making more connections, higher quality connections. So I go through all this in my manifesto. I talk about all the different trust dynamics that are there, why it's important to build trust, why it's important to dismantle distrust, why our society has been created in a way that distrust is built into the fabric of our society so much that you don't even understand how much distrust is in the system. It's like asking a fish, like, how's the water? And they're like, what water? So we're like swimming in the water of distrust all the time. We just don't even realize it. So my banner cry is to build trust with each other. And I want to know, like, what does building trust look like? for everyone out there. And whoever will listen. I mean, I even told my brother's got an email thread with Richard Branson right now. I said, hey, I got a lot of things to talk to Richard Branson about in terms of like building trust, the importance of building trust. Like it's so like this is how far forward I'm leaning on this. Like I'll talk to anyone about trust building. You know, I love jujitsu because jujitsu is an act of building trust. Like you're trusting your training partner to, when you tap, they stop, they stop the roll and you're building trust with each other, right? So can you be safe? Are you helping each other on the journey? So that's another thing in jujitsu is like talk to each other, like ask what your goals are, each other's goals, or how do you support each other's goals? Like people don't talk in jujitsu. It's really weird, It's like build trust with each other, and you can have better training partners. You can reach your goals faster. So, so that would be my only call to action. I would say like I'm like a trust warrior, And so, I know it's kind of cheesy, but someone's got to do it. Someone's got to take the mantle of trust and to help us advance these conversations. They're a lot very difficult conversations, but it's all about courage, and I feel like jujitsu has helped me to build that courage. I have the confidence. Like there's no one I won't talk to about trust, jujitsu, anything really. So that's what I would say is my call to action is to check out the Trust Manifesto and send it to the most influential person in your network and ask them to reach out to me on talk.volley.app/David, which is right there on the links at the fortune cookie. So that'd be about my kind of one singular call to action is go to that and then reach out to me or share it. More importantly, the second thing is, and I don't think this is maybe like the exact right audience, but the other places. So I've been doing business to business sales in tech for a very long time. So the way I help to build sales teams and to advance sales teams is to talk about how important it is to build trust with your customers and your prospects. And so that's really what I'm looking to do. I'll do workshops, for tech companies, usually in about the startup or early stage. But that's a whole separate offering. So I kind of have like two. One is sort of like the metaphysical and kind of trust centric side, and the second is I build out sales strategy and do sales workshops for folks that are building out sales teams. So, but the trust part is absolutely the most
Yeah,
important.
I was gonna say no matter what, the trust part is key. And then, is that what led you to start your podcast? Or and what is the name of your podcast as well?
Thank you. Soft but stronger. So you can go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or even just type my name into Google, and I think that's the first thing that comes up. So it's soft but stronger. It's the idea that in that podcast, first of all, I'm just being vulnerable and sharing, my heart, my soul. The idea of Soft but Stronger is to explore the intersection between rationality, logic, and science, and the other camp of spirituality, metaphysics, and all of that woo-woo stuff, and try to explore what that intersection looks like and how to operationalize that so that way you can have a better life, so you can flourish more and help each other to flourish more. Because I believe that those two things are they're not mutually exclusive. So kind of combine this kind of East and West philosophies together into a what I would say a higher, more operational version of spirituality. Because a lot of times people talk about spirituality, and it's like it's too much in the ether. It's like, what does that really mean? For me, what do I do now? And so, because in the end, we actually action things out. So that's what I'm trying to do is make it easy to action out a higher level of spirituality, and for you to access your most authentic self and your higher self. So that's what I'm looking to expose and really uncover and peel the onion on Soft but Stronger. So absolutely check out Soft but Stronger and subscribe if you can. And I'd love any kind of feedback at all. It'll help me to keep that conversation going because it does help a lot of people, I feel.
And how do you feel as far as you mentioned being vulnerable? I can't pronounce that word for some reason right now.
Vulnerable.
Yeah. How do you how do you feel that podcasting has made you more open? As for me, I've noticed that as each show I do, I'm way more comfortable. I'm opening up more things that I
Yeah.
would never even say on episode one.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a good question. There's a lot of power in being vulnerable. And it's very non-intuitive thing because you can typically see, oh, I'm being vulnerable. I'm exposing my soft underbelly so I can get attacked and get hurt, which is true to a certain degree. But there's also a lot of power because you are, number one, processing a lot of stuff yourself. Number two, you're being courageous by exposing that soft underbelly. So once you have that level of courage and you expose yourself, then it's like, oh wait, I didn't die, or I didn't like my life didn't end. So you become more and more courageous. So it does build up courage as you become more and more vulnerable. And you're also empowering other people to be vulnerable as well. And when you share yourself in that way with someone else, they're much more likely to share back like, "Oh, that's so interesting you said that. Like, now that you said that, I feel compelled to share this with you." So the quality of your relationships just goes up exponentially. Your level of courage and empowerment goes way up. It doesn't matter if one person listens or 1 billion people listen. It's just the fact that you taking the step out there and you're letting yourself be seen and heard in whatever format, whether it's a podcast or YouTube or standing outside with a big sign, saying free hug or whatever it is. It's like, like allow yourself to be seen, let your voice be heard. Everyone has a unique voice. Everyone has something to add. Whenever you share that authentic part of yourself, whoever is listening to it, that they need to hear that in that moment. It may not seem like it, but it's trust in the universe that when you share that genuine part of yourself in good faith, that will help someone else. Like you have a unique expression that's part of you that someone else needs to hear, that someone else needs to intersect with. We all have that. We all are healers and we can all help each other to flourish.
Yeah, you never know. It's that right moment at that right time for that person to hear what they needed to hear from that other person. And it could be on TV or maybe in a book they read or holding a sign, like you said, or there's so many ways. But that's the beauty of it. To me, I'm just surprised that every day I'm still like in the growing stages. Like yesterday, I reached Japan and Mexico. So I'm like another two more countries. And it's, it's such an amazing journey. It's kind of like jujitsu too. Like it's in a way building confidence, that a different type of confidence because you're just seeing like putting yourself out there and you're like, one of my worst episodes I thought is my most popular episode. I'm like, I don't even want to put it out there. It's so bad. And I'm like, oh, everyone seems to like that one. So
That's funny.
we are our worst critics sometimes. And
Mhm.
we need to remember that. And the other part is during the pandemic, I feel a lot of people kind of like feel like their voice isn't important. So whatever you got to do to express yourself now, and man, that's one of the reasons why I love jujitsu. I hadn't done it in so long. I almost felt like alive again. Like I felt like, oh, this is
Yes.
how I'm supposed to feel. It's like I battled with men and women, and at the end we shook hands, and now I feel like that I don't know, adrenaline dump, or I'm still on a natural high 3 days later from it. It's
Mhm.
so great. It's so great. I love it. And
Such a good point, man. I mean, I'm not, doing 6 a days or 6 a week, excuse me, training. I'm just, for me, like success is just showing up, having fun, maybe making a connection. And then to your point, just feeling good inside of my body, feeling good about my energy, feeling good about being able to slough off some, we all kind of pick up toxicities. We go around the world and stuff, and you just kind of like, ugh, right? And then you just roll and you get your heart rate up. And sometimes don't even get my heart rate up. Sometimes it was more of like an instructional or something, but I still felt good about hitting the mats and just being in my body, turning off the phones and the gadgets and all the bells and whistles and just being with other people, like even if they're socially awkward sometimes. And so just that, and then that, like you're saying, that high lasts for a couple of days, man. Like, I mean, I trained on Monday, I'm gonna go tonight as well. But yesterday I still felt good. Even then, I just did a lot of walking yesterday. No, wait, no, I did intervals on the treadmill yesterday, but anyway, so I just still felt good about that. I don't have to train 6 days a week anymore to feel good about jujitsu. So it definitely has shifted. To your point, like during the pandemic, Texas didn't shut down as much as California, other states did. But you still felt like there was a lull where that connection that you had with other people, that excitement, that energy had left. So you felt like you're almost kind of training in kind of a vacuum of sorts, if that makes sense. And so yeah, I missed that. And then when I came to Austin, I had to take some time off just to situate myself here and get my house prepared and all this. But when I got back, it's like, and there was a little bit of resistance there. And so, um, because and this is also on the black belt side. It's like when you get your black belt, you have this. I always consider myself, not always, I've recently considered myself a black belt in remission, or like because you get it and you're like, what happens now? It's like the feeling on the other side of getting a black belt, you're like, and then people are like, oh, you made it. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. Like I've made it, right? So I don't have that fire in the belly to go and keep getting better and better and better. So to me, I think it's like a short-term thing. You get a black belt and then you just kind of like process. I'm like, what happened the last 12 years? You know what I mean? And to your point, you mentioned earlier in the conversation, I've spent so many hours and hours and days, my God, and then traveling for competing and then just and all the time going up to competition, like that 30, 60 days where you're just focused, and you're training so hard. I do. I know some people just like show up like the day. I'm like, oh, I guess we'll just compete. I never do that. I train at least 30 to 60 days pointed. So I feel like I'm always about to compete or I've just gotten out of competition in my competition days. And I'm also working. I'm traveling all over the world and I'm doing my 9 to 5. Um, so I sacrificed a lot, for jujitsu. It doesn't make any money. It could potentially now. I'm not really that focused on monetization, but it is this huge sacrifice. Now, here's a really key thing for folks listening in. Lee, Gabriel, Mark, thanks for tuning in. The key thing about this, I never would have realized is that even though I would bellyache a little bit about this isn't making me any money, I could be doing a side hustle, side business, I could be doing other things that can help with my financial freedom. But when I got later into the stage of jujitsu and realized what like really, really, really meant to me, I only realized at the end of the 12 years that that whole 12 years, I'm now sort of cashing in on the 10, 12 years of training because now I have a new perspective on how to see my life and spirituality as a function of skilling up in jujitsu. So now I fully understand, and now the sacrifice is worth it. But I didn't understand it at the time. I just had to trust the process and keep going on that journey. I think it's the beautiful thing about the rank structures. And you get to that point, you're like, I completed the journey. Now, what does that mean? Let's process, let's think about that, do some reflection. Interesting. Now I see that jujitsu can apply to spirituality, can apply to other domains of life. But I didn't realize that until I got to about year 9, 10, 11. It takes a while sometimes, man, but the juice is so worth the squeeze.
Such an interesting perspective. I'm a blue belt, not on the black belt level, and for me, I'm going to be on maybe the 15-20 year path with a time off of COVID and everything else.
Consistency, man. We talked about that. Consistency.
At this point, me, yes, like my mind is set on I will find a new school and start training, and I will achieve that black belt. But if I were to die before that, as long as I get to keep training and having fun, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like that's really what it's about. It's about. I used to be all about the big race, the competition, but now it's more like
Mhm.
everybody. It is the journey. It's that whole getting ready, hanging out with your training partners. I love that. To me, it's all about that journey. Uh, if you don't win that tournament, if you give it your all, I think that's all that really matters. You
Yeah.
left it all out there. There's nothing.
Man, the tournament stuff, a lot of people come up to me and say, "Well, should I compete?" I'm like, "Look, if you think you should compete or you're contemplating competing, like go compete. The worst thing that'll happen is you get better faster. So once you sign up, you look at it like, shoot, man, I got 25 days to this tournament. I better get in shape. I need to show up a little bit more. I need to get focused. I need to dial in my system, my competition methodology, or those moves that my go to moves. I want to dial that in, and it forces you to get really pointed about that. And then other people are like, oh, you're competing, so help you to get ready if you have a good team at least. And so that's the worst thing. You go there and let's just say you lose the first round, like terribly, like by submission. I think that only happened to me once where I just had this terrible takedown. The funny thing is that takedown that I jacked up when I was it was a lapel drag takedown, which I use successfully every time after that. Man, I screwed it up so bad because I wanted to take this guy down. And I ended up flopping onto my back, and then he started to pass my guard. And I don't know, it was crazy. He took my back and then he choked me out, and it was like it was terrible, man. It was like less than like 90 seconds. I was like, oh, and like my friends had come to see me compete too. I was like, oh, dude, it's terrible. I lost spectacularly, but after that, every time I did the lapel drag takedown, even in the open weight class, I was taking down guys at like 30, 40 plus pounds heavier than me. So one thing you learn in competition is these failures, they're not so much failures, it's just an opportunity to really improve, find out what works, where it doesn't work. There's an acronym I heard the other day. FAIL is first attempt in learning. FAIL. First attempt in learning is fail. So you learn very very quickly, and then you like think and you contemplate. Oh my gosh, And then inevitably after each tournament, you're like, oh, I'm gonna go again. When's the next weekend? We're gonna compete again. So you get that bug like you're talking about. And then you get close to your teammates also. So it does a lot, especially if you're white, blue belt. I mean, I think it's very important to test yourself. You don't have to do like every month, but a couple times a year. The worst that can happen is you just improve faster. It shows a lot about yourself. You grow personally too, everyone has to go through some uh into some process where you fail in front of people so you know what that looks like. Then you get to dismantle your ego and you get to look at your ego and like, okay, like, and you learn so much more about yourself. And it's hard, it's uncomfortable, but comfort is the enemy. You have to allow yourself to be comfortable. You have to find that place, and the way that you can really do that to really kind of push yourself into competition is you just hang around people that are competing that can help to champion that process and to support you and to be supportive in that process. So it's very important to have a gym that you feel like energetically aligned with, that you get along with the personalities. And if you really want to get better, you want to join a gym that encourages, it doesn't mandate competition. I don't feel that poignant about that, but gyms that encourage competition have people that have maybe separate competition classes, connect with those people. And then over time, you'll naturally start to compete as well, but it has to align with your goals. Don't just compete just to compete, like have an intention about it. Like, what's your goals? Like, what do you want to do? What does this competition do? Like, what do you want to look back in, say, 10 years and say about this competition? So have some goals wrapped around it. You just don't do it just because someone else says, "Oh, you ought to compete." Like, well, what do you mean? Like, have the competition be a function of whatever your goals are. So I mean, if you're 70 years old, you just want to like show up and be healthy and you don't want to like hurt yourself, then maybe you don't compete, or maybe you do. So it's just different. Everyone, to your point, everyone's on a different journey. Don't compare yourself to other people. You're on your own specific individual journey. You have your own idiosyncrasies. You have your own, injuries to deal with, age, like medical issues, right? And goals and what have you, and family and obligations and stuff. So make the goals a function of what you need, not what other people are saying that you need. But I am here saying that if you're thinking about competing and you're just a little bit of scare, a little bit of trepidation, you should compete. I don't use should a word, but you should compete if you're thinking about it, right? And you think that, and there's no downside to it, right? Like, you're not injured, you're not gonna like your wife's not gonna leave you if you spend another couple hours training a week or something. So I definitely encourage that. You just become a better person faster.
That's all great advice, David. And I really love your passion. I can see it and hear it when we're talking about jujitsu and everything else. And uh, I even love the way you can laugh about, your failure, about the missing the lapel. And to me, I hear that that failure basically made you good at it, because after
Mhm.
that, you got it every time. So I hope people kind of can hear that lesson. And I want to thank you so much for being on what's today, the 8th, Mary Fitness, stay
Mhm.
8 out of 31. And if you'd like to contact David, you can click on the fortune cookie, or I will put his information on the Instagram. And when it's out on what podcast, it'll all his information will be on there in case you want to contact him. And thank you, David. It was a really pleasure having you on, and I hope you have happy holidays, whatever you celebrate.
Mhm.
And thank you so much. And thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Happy holidays. And again, you can reach me at talk.volley.app/David, or on Instagram as well. I'll respond to everyone that reaches out. Thank you for having me, Ray.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.